Welcome to the fourth edition of the Fantasy Draft Weekly Rundown. Joining us this week is special guest Adam Pfeifer. We are excited to hear from him, but before we get to him, let's get to the co-host, the NFL Iron Man, the guy you guys all know, London Fletcher. London, let me ask you a question. Joe Philbin was fired this week. It's been a long time coming, to be honest with you. How do you think this changes the outlook of the Dolphins moving forward, and do you think this helps Lamar Miller?
Uh, I'm not sure because the Dolphins are so bad. Not just offensively, defensively, they're terrible. And Dominican Sue and Cameron Wake and all those guys, they haven't lived up to their billing coming into the season. You know, I think it will create a sense of urgency on the football team. Whether it'll translate to them having a playoff run in the last 12 games. I don't see that happening. I still think New England's the cream of that division, and then the Jets are a vastly improved football team. So I don't think it's going to translate to them making the playoffs. Will they get a couple more wins? Perhaps, but more or less than anything, it'll create a sense of urgency on that football team and maybe get some guys to play better.
Yeah, and that defense you'd think would be better than it has been. Sue, Wake, they need to start playing better, and hopefully this sparks them. Moving on, Tavon Austin scored two more touchdowns last week, which now gives him 3 and 4 weeks. Vincent Jackson had the big day, despite Pro Football Focus tweeting out that Josh Norman actually shadowed him and not Mike Evans, which was everyone's worry with Mike Evans. So, what do you make of Austin and Jackson moving forward? Are they going to be the main focuses? Are they people you're looking at on fantasy draft in the upcoming weeks?
With Tavon, he's a guy that you definitely have to start looking at because they found a way to finally start getting him the football. You look at him being a high draft pick a couple years ago, and now, they're creating ways to get him the ball, whether it's in the as a running back in the receiving game. He has value as a return man. So because he touched the ball in a variety of different ways, he would be someone that you would want to look at adding, especially as a flex player. Vincent Jackson, you just don't. No, I'm still concerned. I mean, you look at it and you get a bigger picture of Jameis Winston in this offense, and you'll say, all right, well, Vincent Jackson is more his go-to guy as opposed to Evans. So once you get a true feel of that from a defensive standpoint, they'll start to make adjustments and take away one of those guys.
Right. All right. Well, let's get into the picks for this upcoming week after we've already looked at last week. Let's start at the quarterback position because I think it's a little interesting this week. And while I was spending up last week if Andrew Luck played, he didn't end up playing. So this week I'm not even going to try and spend up. And I'm going to stay in the lower tier with Jay Cutler. I'm going back to the Bears after bad mouthing him last week. He surprisingly ended up playing, but they're playing a Kansas City team that's just becoming straight up fun to pick on. I mean, they are giving it up to wide receivers, and even with the return of Sean Smith, Andy Dalton put up 321 yards, one touchdown, and his fantasy point total was ranked sixth among all quarterbacks. Kansas City's allowed 10 touchdowns. They got Alshon Jeffrey back, which certainly will help the wide receiver core. We know Bennett had the big week, so I'm going with Jay Cutler this week. London, who do you like?
I think I'm gonna go Captain Obvious here. I'm gonna go with Tom Brady. I think it's time to start looking at Brady as a play. I mean, you look at what he's doing: 370 yards per game passing. That's you have teams that don't get that in total offense a game, but he's doing this just in passing the football. 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's going to face a Dallas Cowboys defense that's struggling to say the least. I know they'll get Greg Hardy playing this week, but the Cowboys, they haven't been very good on defense. You look at Gronkowski, you look at Edelman. Brady has so many weapons, even Deion Lewis that he can get the ball to. He's a guy that I would look at playing. And another guy at the quarterback position, Drew Brees, going against the Philadelphia Eagles. You look at what he did, the other night, Sunday night against the Cowboys, and then look at what Kirk Cousins was able to do against the Philadelphia Eagles. Engineering that game-winning drive, throwing for nearly 300 yards against them. So I like Brees and I like Brady in this week.
Yeah, and I actually like one of Brady's targets. We'll get to him later. Adam, let's bring you in here since you haven't said a whole lot yet. Who do you like at the quarterback position this week?
What's going on, guys? Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm all aboard with London. Brady is the top quarterback this week for me. But since he went with Brady, I'll go a little down the board, and I like Philip Rivers a lot. If you look at the games he's had and the success that he's had in the games he's played, they've been against bottom tiered pass defenses and at home, and that's what he has this week against Pittsburgh on Monday night. He gets Antonio Gates back, who has pretty much been his security blanket his entire career. Um, and there's a decent amount of volume with Rivers. They haven't been able to run the ball very effectively with that offensive line. It's been really banged up, and you look at what they've been doing. They've been going a lot of no huddle. I think I saw that they were top five in no huddle snaps per game. So Rivers is going to get a lot of volume, and I think this game is relatively high scoring. And Keenan Allen's playing at a high level. He gets Gates back. So I like Philip Rivers a lot.
Yeah, and last week was definitely discouraging for the run game. Everyone thought Melvin Gordon was going off, and we
Yep.
got more of nothing from
I
him.
know, I know. I I I was definitely down on Cleveland's defense, and I thought San Diego would be able to have a lot more success running the football against them.
Yeah, yeah, and this week, Joe Flacco gets them, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do with that Cleveland defense. Moving on to the running back position, I'm actually going to go the opposite of London, sort of. He likes Drew Brees. I like Mark Ingram this week. On the road, Mark Ingram has averaged 4.4 yards a carry in his career versus 4.1 at home. And I've mentioned Drew Brees' splits, and his are kind of the opposite. At home, he's the man. On the road, he doesn't get it done quite as much. So I think they're going to focus more on the run. But really, what I liked is the fact that Brees' shoulder is clearly hurting, and that's kind of limiting him down the field. And therefore, Ingram's getting involved in the passing game. I mean, this is a guy who's caught at least 6 passes in 2 of his 4 games, and last year he caught more than 3 passes just 4 times. He's already done it 3 times this year. So you get him involved in a PPR format, he'll likely get the goal line carries. I think he's just so safe. London, who do you like at the running back?
I'm gonna go with Justin Forsett. I'm gonna go against this Cleveland defense again, and then the fact that Forsett had some success running the ball last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've had a 10 days rest going into this game, and then you look at the fact that Steve Smith Sr. is probably not going to play, so I look for the Ravens to look to run the ball a lot more. So I'm encouraged by Forsett. The success he had against the Steelers last ball game, and then the fact that Cleveland is still 31st in the league defending the run.
There you go. Adam, are you on board with those, and who do you like?
Yep. London stole my guy again, so I gotta, I gotta go to somebody else. But no, Forsett is a great play. And it was really nice to see them give him the ball 27 times. A lot of people were kind of concerned with Lorenzo Taliaferro and them, but he outsnapped them, I think, 63-17. So Cleveland's been bad against the run for 2 straight years now. So Forsett's definitely a top guy for me. I also really like Deion Lewis this week. Coming off the bye week, Brady's playing, as good of a quarterback as anyone right now. And you look at Deion Lewis, I think, even after the bye, he's top 10 in the league in terms of running back snaps. So they're playing him a lot, even with, a couple fumbles. And yeah, and you look at the Dallas defense right now. I mean, they gave C.J. Spiller and Mark Ingram combined for 11 catches for almost 200 yards on Sunday night. Lewis is averaging about five or six targets a game. And this Dallas run defense, and even the passing game, I mean, they just lost Sean Lee potentially to a concussion, who's probably one of the 5 or 6 best coverage linebackers in the league. And they're giving up, they're the second in receiving yards per game allowed to running backs, fourth in receptions, and sixth in targets. So this game has a pretty high total. I think Deion Lewis has a nice game.
One last running back that we can't overlook, and the fact that he's probably number one as a fantasy running back, but also the matchup when Le'Veon Bell going against the San Diego Chargers. You look at what the Chargers, you think about them giving up 163 yards to Minnesota, 175 yards to Cincinnati on the ground. So, Le'Veon Bell going against the Chargers. Mike Vick is the quarterback, so we know he's not the guy that Ben Roethlisberger is running that Pittsburgh Steelers offense in terms of the passing game. And then the amount of criticism that Todd Haley has faced by not giving the ball to Le'Veon Bell in overtime, two critical situations, fourth down plays, and you don't feed the horse, it doesn't make sense. So look for Le'Veon Bell to have a big game, both as a running back and also catching passes out of the backfield.
Yeah, and I don't usually mention Le'Veon Bell because when I set my cash lineups, it's usually click Le'Veon Bell and then who's next. I mean, he is just such a monster. And yeah, I tweeted out that Todd Haley had a WAR, which is a wins above replacement. It's a baseball stat of about -3.5 last game because what was he doing not giving the ball to Bell? It didn't make any sense. Moving on to the wide receiver position, I actually liked a couple guys, but I'm only going to talk about one since we got three of us. I liked Allen Robinson, but the one I really want to talk about is Golden Tate. Calvin Johnson last year, I remember the battle between him and Patrick Peterson. It was really fun to watch. It got really chippy. And when it was all said and done, Johnson had only caught 5 of 12 targets, which, for a Matt Stafford typical receiver makes sense. But for Calvin Johnson, even that's to bed. So the run game right now is giving them absolutely nothing. They're averaging 47 yards a game. They've put together no more than 69 rushing yards a game. So if they're not going to be able to run the ball, they're going to be able to shadow Calvin Johnson. And to me, that means a lot of short passing game to Golden Tate, who I think can absolutely rack up the yards. Don't forget, this is a guy who caught 99 passes last season. DeAndre Hopkins just had a monster week, not scoring a touchdown. I think Golden Tate could do something similar this week. London, who do you like?
I like Patrick Peterson's teammate, Larry Fitzgerald. You look at what Fitz has been able to do in this season. 5 touchdown passes, receptions rather, 30 points per game, fantasy points per game. So, he's going against a Detroit secondary that they're not a great secondary. They haven't been able to really rush the passer a lot, although they got at their Seattle and Russell Wilson's quarterback a little bit. But Seattle's offensive line is just not good. I like Fitzgerald in this matchup. Carson Palmer has shown that he likes Fitzgerald, especially in the red zone. So Fitzgerald is the guy I like at the wide receiver position.
All right, and Adam, what about you? You got a different take on this week?
Am I allowed to cheat and say Julio Jones? No, he's amazing, but I'm gonna go with assuming he plays, kind of what off of what Ricky said, and I really like Alshon Jeffrey if he plays, and signs are pointing that he should. The week 1 game, the only game he played this year, he saw 11 targets, and if you look at last year when the games Brandon Marshall didn't play, Alshon was targeted about 10 times a game. Obviously, Marshall's not there anymore. You talked about how bad this Chiefs secondary is. So I think Alshon Jeffrey, he's when he's healthy, he's going to be around a top 10 receiver. And I think now with the injury and him only playing 1 game, his price is going to be at a point where it may not be the rest of the year. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that in probably one of the best matchups on the slate.
Yeah. I went with Cutler. I certainly like Alshon. I actually like Eddie Royal as well.
Yeah.
And if you were cheating with Julio Jones, I'm going to cheat at the tight end position. There's only one guy who you really want to roster just about every single week. I think we know that guy's Rob Gronkowski. When I look at it, I think one of you is probably going to say one of the other tight ends that I'm on. But in a cash game, I just feel so much safer with Rob Gronkowski. He's simply the guy, at least 94 yards in each game, at least 100 or a touchdown in each game. He's just such an advantage at the position. And if you're not spending up on the quarterback, if you're rostering guys like Ingram or Tate, or you can save money almost everywhere, anywhere. He just makes so much sense at a position where, you need a touchdown most weeks for it to be relevant. I think Gronkowski's just set it and forget it this week, kind of like Le'Veon Bell. London, what do you think?
I like Travis Kelce, tight end. He seems to perform better against 3-4 defenses as opposed to 4-3 defenses. I just like him in this matchup. You look at Kelce. Definitely talk about Kansas City. Alex Smith. They don't get the ball to the wide receivers as much. As far as scoring touchdowns, I think Jeremy Maclin finally broke that streak of wide receivers not scoring touchdowns. So Kelsey is the guy I like this weekend.
Adam, we kind of took away the two top options. Who do you like?
Yeah, Kelsey was definitely my guy too. Because Kelsey's interesting though, because if you're paying up for tight end, odds are you're paying up for Gronkowski. So in tournaments, in these large tournaments, I kind of like and sometimes just pivoting off of Gronkowski with Kelsey, who probably doesn't have the same upside as Gronkowski, but he's probably got as much upside as anybody else at the position. And I know the Bears look good in terms of defending the tight end this year, but they faced Richard Rodgers, Darren Fells, Michael Rivera, and then the one game where an actual featured tight end played against him, it was Jimmy Graham, and he caught 7 of 8 targets for 83 yards and a touchdown. So I definitely like Kelsey, and that Rob Gronkowski guy is not too shabby too, I guess.
Well, I just wanted to mention it because I thought one of you would. Owen Daniels against the
Yeah,
Raiders, who are just giving it up. I think he's definitely worth at least some consideration.
Oh, yeah. Tight ends have had a lot of success against the Raiders.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Owen Daniels, I think he's priced either minimum or near minimum. Needs a name shout. Let's move on to defense. That's London's specialty, certainly not mine. I'm gonna go the same route I've gone the last few weeks. I feel like a broken record. Go against Colin Kaepernick. The Giants' defense has been stopping the run, which means there'll be little Carlos Hyde, at least you would think, and it's going to rely on Colin Kaepernick. And we've seen the last few weeks that just hasn't worked. That's the end of my analysis for defense. London, who you got?
I'm going to give the New England Patriots some love, and I know Brady and his offense gets a lot of notoriety, but the defense, they do a great job of obviously taking away a team's strengths. You look at the Dallas Cowboys. Dunbar just tore his ACL. Noah, Dez Bryant. Wouldn't it probably be somebody that they'll look to take away, and then the running game. Not a lot of weapons for Dallas. You think about Brandon Whedon as the starting quarterback. So this is a matchup that I like for the New England Patriots defense.
Adam?
yeah, I like that call because, especially because, and I'm sure London can attest to this from his playing career. Bill Belichick really thrives off inexperienced offensive players. I know Whedon's been around, but he hasn't really started in a while since the Romo injury. And then you have Joseph Randle, a first year starting running back, Terrence Williams, who's really is still a young player and hasn't been the guy except for this year. So New England's definitely interesting. I like Denver. I think they're the best defense in the NFL. Oakland, Oakland's not the same pushover team as they once were, but Denver's just playing at such a high level right now. They probably have the best cornerback duo in the league, one of the best pass rushes, if not the best pass rush. So they're definitely a defense I'll be targeting. They're just so good every single week. I think every week they've had at least a sack fumble. So they're going to get turnovers in a big way.
Yeah, and I wrote about Amari Cooper as a player to avoid this week for that reason with that cornerback duo. It's
They're
tough to
so
use him,
good.
and yeah, this is a real test for Amari Cooper. So I'm going to sit back and watch from the sidelines. All right, let's move on to my favorite segment, which is questions, which usually starts with me asking Twitter questions from all my followers. But now we brought on Adam Pfeifer today, and he is an admitted big London Fletcher fan from back in the day. So I wanted to open up the floor. I wanted to open up the
Yeah.
floor and give him the time to ask you questions, talk to you for a few minutes. Adam, it's all you.
You know what? Before you say something, Adam, why don't you have my picture on your wall? You got Ken Griffey Jr. and You say you're a London Fletcher fan, but I don't see me up on your wall.
I mean, I got a bunch of Bill stuff here. I mean, I'm a Ken Griffey fan too, but if I could get my hands on a London Fletcher, because I'm outside of I'm in Pennsylvania now, so it's kind of hard to find London Fletcher stuff around here. No, but obviously, as Ricky alluded to, I've been a Bills fan for a while. I was born in upstate New York, so I've watched you play for a while. You were easily one of my favorite players. And a player that you reminded me of was Fred Jackson, who's obviously cut in the offseason. I was wondering your take on Fred Jackson being cut and your thoughts on him as a player because he reminded me a lot of you, just that veteran leadership, the guy who would do whatever it takes to win. So
Yeah, Fred represented the Buffalo Bills as a true professional, not only on the football field but also in the community. You look at a guy, Division III player, went and played NFL Europe, and then made the team. And not only made the team, eventually he became the starting running back and was there for over a decade or about a decade. Tremendous asset to the community and to the football team. I was surprised that they released him, but then when you look at their running back situation, they got Carlos Williams, a young running back that they like. They got Dixon, who can play special teams, LaShawn McCoy. So when you look at Fred, his cap number and the added value or that the other guys have on special teams, it from a true business standpoint, it makes sense. But I would have loved to see Fred continue to play his, finish his career in Buffalo. He's that type of guy who, would have definitely been great to stay in Buffalo his whole career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also, like I said, I was born in upstate New York. And then when I was about 3 or 4, I had to move down to Pennsylvania. So I go up there every couple months. And it was about 2006 or 2007, I believe. You guys were playing the Packers in Buffalo. I don't know if you remember this, but you had a 17-yard pick six on Brett Favre, and I was going nuts. What was that like, picking off a guy like Brett Favre and taking it back to the house?
That was a pretty big deal. I like you got that Ken Griffey, picture posted up. I have that football in my trophy case, the interception, the pick six against Brett Favre. You're talking about, Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. When this time comes up next year, it doesn't get much better than not only intercepting him, but to take it into the end zone. And I tried my version of the Lambeau leap back then. It didn't work out too well, but it's still something I remember.
That
a great
I always
deal.
remember that because my dad's a Packers fan and he was with us, so that was fun.
Yeah.
There you go. London Fletcher and the Lambeau Leap will forever live in infamy or in fame, regardless of which side you're on. Let's move on to the user questions. Thank you, Adam, for joining us. We really appreciate it. I hope London gave you your fix of what you needed from him. Let's move on to the user questions, and I'm sure, Adam, you know some of these guys, but let's start with at Big Mac 9812, who asks London, this is such a typical question. Is Joe Flacco an elite quarterback?
that's for the Baltimore Ravens. He is an elite quarterback. You look at what he's done, lead them to a Super Bowl, and they're paying him like an elite quarterback. So in their minds, he's an elite quarterback. As far as my take on him, I would look at him maybe a little bit in the second tier below, like your Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, even. I look at him beyond Ben Roethlisberger. So, those are guys that I would look at as being as the elite of the quarterback position, and throw Flacco kind of at that next tier. He's a top 10 quarterback. Where you put him between 6 and 10 is up to you. But I don't see him maybe as a top 5 quarterback right now.
There you go. I agree with you. Joe Flacco, not the elite of the elite. Moving on, at Mark F283 asks on Twitter, are there any underachieving offensive players that you see turning it around in Week 5? And I'll open up this question to both of you. London, why don't you start?
Man, underachieving. Who? I guess anything's possible going week to week. Maybe Roddy White. I know Roddy's hasn't gotten a lot of targets. He's made a little noise about it, and maybe this is the week that he's able to get something going against a Redskins secondary that's not very good. You look at what Philadelphia Eagles were able to do against them, this past ball game. Maybe Roddy White's able to put up some numbers this ball game.
Adam, what do you think? Any underachieving guys you like?
Yeah, I'll stay at the wide receiver position. I think Mike Evans might have his biggest week this week. They were talking about they need to get him the ball more. And I just wish Jameis Winston, it's almost like a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, he's not afraid to take those shots downfield, but at the same time, it kind of takes some possessions away from them. But Jacksonville's defense doesn't really scare anyone. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Evans finally had that big week we've been waiting for.
I like that pick. I like that pick. I'm on board with Mike Evans. London, this is the last question for you. This one comes from our friend at Josh3302. He asks, what was the team's Thanksgiving dinner like when they played in a Thanksgiving game? I think he's looking for the quantity of food that was consumed.
you know, I only played in one Thanksgiving game in my whole career. It was a couple years ago, 2012, against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. Um, had a pretty good game. We won. Had a pick. I had a pick against Romo. So that that day, once we finished the game, had a big spread for us in the after the game before we got on the buses. Your typical Thanksgiving meal. It was in Dallas right before we got on the on the buses to head out. So you got your turkey, macaroni and cheese, your dressing, cranberries. I remember Robert Griffin, Robert Griffin III, his mother. Bless her heart, she made me sweet potato pie, which I was so happy about. So it's your typical Thanksgiving meal.
There you have it. The Thanksgiving meal for the Washington Redskins. I assume there was a lot of turkey needed for that one. Until next time, I'm Ricky Sanders with London Fletcher. We want to thank Adam Pfeifer again for coming on. Hope it was everything you thought it would be. Until next week, we are out.